Hi, I'm Investigator Richard Chavez from the Doña Ana County Sheriff's Department. I'd like to talk to you today about trauma and how it can affect children and youth. The children in the first two ensuring child safety videos have all experienced trauma. Try to put yourself in their situation. You're in the backseat of the car with your brother and your mom's driving pretty crazy. She's actually starting to scare you. Suddenly, you see a police car drive up with flashing lights. The police officer approaches the car and tells your mom to get out. He then escorts her and puts her in the backseat of his patrol car. You're frightened and you're not sure what's going to happen with your mom or with your brother. Your mom and dad have been fighting a lot lately. They hit each other and have even begun throwing things at each other. It's pretty scary. You don't want them to hurt each other, but you also want to make sure that you and your little sister are safe. One day you come home from school and find nobody there. It's pretty strange because your mom is always home when you get there. You feel something bad has happened and you're not really sure what to do. Your mom has been hitting you a lot lately, and your little brother too, and you're not sure why. Sometimes her boyfriend hits you too. You get locked in your bedroom when you're crying, even if you're bleeding. One day, a police officer comes to your house with a man who says he's a caseworker. They ask you to pack some personal items, and then they take you to a stranger's house. You're not sure what's happening with your mom or how long you have to stay at this place. Children who have experienced traumatizing situations often face lifelong challenges different from, but more difficult than those faced by other children. We in law enforcement encounter children in traumatic situations all the time, whether they're victims, witnesses, or simply innocent bystanders. We can play an important role in preventing trauma and in minimizing the long-term effect. So what is trauma? What are some of the effects of trauma on children? And how can we as law enforcement help?
So trauma is an experience or an event that someone believes is life-threatening or dangerous. It can be something such as a physical injury, a violent crime, or witnessing somebody in a violent situation. It combines powerful emotions with physical reactions, and it continues to be re-experienced, producing intrusive and harmful thoughts. It is more than something that is just bad. It overactivates the body's stress response system, and reminders of the event can impact relationships to self and to others. It can make children feel less safe in the world that they live in. Most people have experienced some form of traumatic event in their lifetime. But for kids and young people, it can be especially difficult due to their powerlessness and vulnerability. It can be especially difficult for children in the child welfare system who have little control over where they live, who they see, who they remain connected to, and who is there to keep them safe in their world. Anytime a child is removed from their home, it can be especially traumatic. Usually a child being removed from their home comes from other forms of trauma as well, such as abuse, severe neglect, parental arrest, and sometimes parental death. For some children, encounters with law enforcement can be traumatic. Many children are taught to be afraid of law enforcement or that police officers are bad guys there to cause trouble for their families. For some children, police officers are there to arrest a parent or to remove them from their homes, and this can be especially traumatic.
Hi, my name is Shantelle. When I was younger, I used to deal with a lot of law enforcement from all over the state, mainly. When I was a kid, my parents said that cops were boogeymans. They can get you in trouble or take away your parents away or get yourself in trouble as well. When the cops would come to my house, they would pull me aside and ask me questions most of the time. And I just didn't know how to answer because I didn't know how to deal with that type of situation. I felt kind of awkward, and I felt like I was the one in trouble, not my parents. Some of them would just push us out of the way and just not acknowledge the fact that we were there.
Hi, my name's Lauren. When I was younger and when the police came to my house, it was sometimes frustrating because they would leave and we would still be in the same situation that we were in before, if not worse. My mom remarried and she ended up marrying an abusive person. Initially, when the police came to my house, I remember feeling scared because we had been told, that police are bad people and they're gonna get our family in trouble and they're gonna hurt us. I remember being scared, especially when they don't explain the situation or they don't even ask if you're okay. A specific time that I can remember speaking with the police, they had to take my mom to the hospital and they didn't know if they should take me and my sister or if they should leave us with with my mom's ex-husband. But what they didn't know was like how abusive he was. So they left us there with him, and the police didn't even explain why they were taking my mom. They didn't explain what was going on. They never even asked me like if I was okay staying with him, especially with kids. Like, I just think that police officers should just make them feel safe.
I remember one officer got down on one knee and explained to me what a warrant was, why some people do certain things to get in trouble, and what was jail. When the cop got down on one knee, it made me feel more comfortable with the fact that they were inside my home and that they were always there. I started to trust them a little bit better.
So the one particular time that I did feel safe with the police is when I was being taken into foster care. I had actually knew the female police, and she knew my family, and when she took me to the shelter, she cleared everything out of the front seat of her car, and she put me in the front seat of the car, and like she just made sure that I knew it wasn't my fault and I wasn't in trouble for anything. Even though I was in a scary situation being taken away and I didn't know what was going to happen to my family, she stood there by me the whole time and made sure I knew like I was okay.
I would really, really love an officer to get down to a kid's level. I mean, when you're dealing with a little kid, get down to their level and look at them eye to eye and be like, look, this is what's going on and this is why we're doing this, and help them understand that they're there to help and not to freak out their family or their other siblings.
Because of all the bad experiences I've had with police officers, that one girl did really change my whole outlook on interacting with police officers, because I did feel safe. And so I think I was just really grateful for her, because it was such a hard situation and I didn't feel like I had to go through it by myself.
Although many children display extraordinary resilience in the aftermath of these types of experiences, many develop psychological and developmental delays that cause serious and long-lasting consequences. In recent years, the impact of trauma on the developing brain has been better understood. At the time of exposure to a traumatic event, the human body reacts by protecting itself from physical and emotional damage. The brain's alarm mechanism, the mechanism that sets off a fight, flight, or freeze response, is triggered, and those primitive fear-related responses become persistent. The overstimulation of this alarm mechanism, which is located in a more primitive part of the brain, can inhibit the development of the parts of the brain which govern more complex functions, such as thinking and regulating emotions. The impact of trauma can be affected by several factors, including the child's age and developmental level, the child's perception of the danger faced, whether the child was a victim or a witness, the child's relationship to the victim or perpetrator, the child's past experience with trauma, the adversities the child faces following the trauma, and the presence or availability of grown-ups who can offer help and protection to the child. Destructive, self-destructive, and suicidal behaviors are often associated with trauma victims. Symptoms such as inappropriate emotion, explosive anger, assault, anxiety, self-harming activities like cutting or burning, disassociation or numbing, being over-alert or easily startled, difficulty focusing and thinking, and sleep disturbances are all possibilities for children who experience trauma in their lifetime. These effects typically vary by the age of the child. For young children, trauma can lead to difficulty managing fears, startle reactions, and aggression, poor impulse control, sleep disturbances, limited attention span, difficulties with learning and problem solving, behavior that shifts between overly fearful and overly aggressive. For adolescents, it's common to see reckless or risk-taking behavior, apathy or failure in school, making poor choices, or aggressive behavior, both verbally or physically.
Please rise. Court is now in session. Andrea Romero presiding.
Thank you. Please be seated. I'm Judge John Romero, the presiding judge of the 2nd Judicial District Court, Children's Court Division in Albuquerque, New Mexico. As a judge, I have the opportunity to observe families, children, and their parents in my court on a regular basis. It's very apparent to me that traumatic stress produces long-term effects on childhood development and life direction. Adverse experiences such as abuse, neglect, and domestic violence during childhood can impact the growing child's sense of connectedness and ability to form relationships. The children and youth whose cases I hear in my courtroom often exhibit these issues and many more. Entering child custody doesn't make these problems go away. Even in a best case scenario, the Child Protective Services system does not make a good parent. I have many stories of seeing children first through a child welfare case and then later through the juvenile justice system. Equally distressing for me is a child who's still in the juvenile justice system but now is a parent in the protective services system whose child is now in state's custody. Law enforcement officials are often the first responders, and their interactions with the child can have a long-lasting effect. You are involved in what could be the first step of a life-changing process for a child. Everything in such a traumatic situation could potentially alter a child's life, including the way law enforcement treats that child's parents. Being objective in these situations is important, as well as easing the fear of children and reminding them that whatever is going on is not their fault. All of us in the system, from law enforcement to attorneys to judges, to everyone involved in the system, we want to be firm and encouraging, and we all have a responsibility and a duty to treat the family with dignity and respect. Remember that nothing is accomplished with shame and blame, and that law enforcement is there to help and provide services, not to create an enemy. You have a tough job as the first responders, but you also have the opportunity to make a difficult situation a little less traumatic. Court is adjourned.
Please rise.
Have you ever had a memory triggered by a smell or a certain song? For most of us, that's a very pleasant experience. But for some trauma victims, these memories can be very difficult. They may not understand what triggered their memory, or they may not have words to explain them. Many times, triggers can be visual. Someone looks like the abuser, a police officer, or an object that scares them. They could be auditory, angry voices, things banging, loud noises, sirens, whispering, or even be something such as a touch, a taste, or a smell. Being separated from a caregiver may trigger strong reactions. These reactions may be enhanced due to past traumas.
One of the best ways to help children who have been traumatized is to provide accurate information regarding the situation and to address any of their worries or questions that they may have. The information must be tailored to fit the child's developmental level and understanding of the situation. Remember, children, especially those that have been abused and neglected, may be developmentally younger than their actual age. Recounting unpleasant experiences can be uncomfortable for children, so making light of the situation by cracking jokes or making fun may be inappropriate. Furthermore, a parent may be hesitant to talk about the child's trauma. Confronting that parent about what has happened to the child may be upsetting. Our goal for both children and parents is to build rapport and gain their trust in a limited amount of time. Law enforcement officers can use different strategies to help children feel more comfortable and to minimize the trauma that may be induced. Take off your hat. Introduce yourself with your first name. Use the child's first name. Use simple language. Sit at the child's physical level. Explain that your role is to keep them and their family safe. Acknowledge that it is okay for a child to not want to talk. Recognize the child's love and worry for their family member. Answer any questions the child may have. Ask only one question at a time. Avoid why questions. Instead, use what questions. Ensure the child understands the question. Ask open-ended questions and use simple reflection to make sure there is clarity. Make no assumptions of the child's abilities based on the child's age or size. Allow the child to hold on to a stuffed animal or other object for comfort. Avoid rushing the child. Allow the child time to process their feelings and observe any nonverbal signals the child may be emitting. Remember, this child's body is responding to the situation and may affect his or her ability to listen, reason, and retain information. It may also affect their emotional and physical responses to the situation. Please remember, the way this incident is handled will impact this child's future.